The immune system is an integrated network of organs, tissues, cells, and cell products, such as antibodies, that protect the body from pathogens and other foreign substances. Blood and lymph are the two fluid systems of the body. The blood is a red vascular tissue consisting of the liquid called plasma and the cells, red blood corpuscles, RBCs, white blood corpuscles, WBCs, and platelets. The lymph is a colorless vascular fluid having fluid matrix called plasma and white blood corpuscles. Both these components of lymph escape from the blood through the thin walls of the capillaries, the plasma by ultrafiltration or diffusion under pressure, and the corpuscles by amoeboid movement. The plasma and the corpuscles, RBCs and WBCs, form the main components of blood. Red blood corpuscles are red in color due to the presence of a respiratory pigment, hemoglobin, which is responsible for transporting oxygen to and carbon dioxide away from all parts of the body. RBCs are circular, disc-like, biconcave, and without nuclei. These are about 7.7 microns in diameter. The number of RBCs is usually 5 million per cubic millimeter of blood. The WBCs are devoid of hemoglobin and hence are colorless. Leukocytes are larger than RBCs in size and may range from 10 to 20 microns in diameter. They vary in number from 6,000 to 10,000 per cubic millimeter of blood. WBCs are of two main types, the granulocytes or polymorphonuclear leukocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes are cells that contain granules in the cytoplasm, for example, neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. Neutrophils are large cells whose granules stain lilac with neutral dyes. They contain a nucleus that has 3 or more lobes, the lobes joined together by hair-like chromatin. These cells constitute about 60 to 70% of WBCs. Eosinophils have coarse granules in the cytoplasm which stain deep red with eosin, and the nucleus is bilobed. These make up about 4% of WBCs. Basophils have coarse granules which stain deep blue with a basic stain, and the nucleus is small without differentiation or partially differentiated into lobes. These constitute 0.5 to 1% of the WBCs. Agranulocytes are without granules in the cytoplasm. These include lymphocytes and monocytes. Lymphocytes have large, rounded or oval nuclei which stain deep purple with white stain, and the cytoplasm a pale blue color. These constitute 20 to 35% of WBCs. Monocytes are very large cells, about 2 to 3 times as large as RBCs. The nucleus is large and slightly kidney-shaped, and the cytoplasm stains pale blue. These constitute 3 to 8% of the WBCs. WBCs defend the body by destroying pathogens, either by their phagocytic activities or by forming antibodies. The blood platelets are fragmented bodies without nuclei. The number of platelets varies from 200,000 to 300,000 per cubic millimeter. These play an important role in blood coagulation. Lymph is a fluid tissue which bathes all the cells of the body and acts as a connective link between the blood and body cells. Lymph is formed when interstitial fluid, proteins, extravasated WBCs, microorganisms, and absorbed fat pass through the capillary wall into the tissue spaces by ultrafiltration. The lymph is continually drained from the tissue spaces through a system of tubules known as the lymphatic system. Lymph vessels originate as microscopic spaces and finally converge into the great thoracic duct, which opens into the venous system. The aggregates of lymphatic tissue form the lymph glands, or lymph nodes, and lymphoid structures, or lymph organs. A group of organs and tissues which produce lymphocytes are collectively termed the lymphoid organs. Lymphoid organs are subdivided into the primary lymphoid organs and the peripheral lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs include the bone marrow and the thymus, which supply the peripheral lymphoid organs with mature lymphocytes, already programmed to perform their functions. Peripheral lymphoid organs include the spleen, lymph nodes, tonsils, and the epithelium-associated lymphoid tissue. Bone marrow is the hollow space in bones which is made up of tissues, fat, blood vessels, and blood cell precursor cells. The formation of new blood cells takes place in the bone marrow. The thymus lies in the upper part of the chest and secretes the hormone thymosin, which has a regulatory effect on the peripheral lymphocytes. The spleen is the largest of the lymphoid organs, which lies in the left part of the abdominal cavity between the stomach and the diaphragm. It contains a large collection of lymphocytes and macrophages. The tonsils are a group of small rounded organs in the pharynx, which are also filled with lymphocytes and macrophages. The lymph nodes are oval or bean-shaped aggregates of lymphatic tissue. These vary considerably in size, as small as the head of a pin to as large as a bean, and usually occur in chains of 2 to 12, although occasionally a node may exist alone. Each node has a slight depression on one side called the hilus, through which an artery and vein enter and leave. Besides, there are several lymphatic vessels which carry lymph away from the nodes. The node is surrounded by a capsule of fibrous connective tissue, which also radiates through the lymph node substance. These fibrous radiations are called trabeculae, which divide the interior of the node into spaces called lymph sinuses, which are filled with masses of lymphoid tissue called lymph follicles. The follicular substance appears to be an area of interaction between the blood and the lymph. The lymphocytes are produced by the lymphoid organs. The undifferentiated lymphoid cells, derived from fetal liver or bone marrow, migrate to the thymus and are differentiated into B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. B lymphocytes, or B cells, mature in the bone marrow and are then carried by the blood to the peripheral lymphoid organs. In addition, other lymphocytes leave the bone marrow in an immature state during fetal and early neonatal life. These cells are carried to the thymus, where they mature to form T lymphocytes, or T cells, and are then carried to the peripheral lymphoid organs. A third class of lymphocytes, often termed natural killer T cells, or NK cells, are also present in addition to the B and T cells. Immunity, or immune response, refers to the resistance exerted by the organisms to invasive pathogens, such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, and other parasites, or their toxic products, as well as non-microbial foreign matters. Immunity, or immune response, can be divided into two main types. 1. Innate immunity, or non-specific immune responses, and 2. Acquired immunity, or specific immune responses. Innate immunity is the natural immunity which a person receives from his or her genetic constitution, and does not arise from prior infection or vaccination. These include the common protective reactions of the organism against the invasion of foreign substances or cells, such as surface barriers, biochemical factors, and cellular mechanisms. Intact skin, mucous membranes, lysozymes, and other physical barriers help prevent pathogens from infecting the body. Pathogens generally cannot get past the skin and the inner lining of organs, such as the epithelial lining of the digestive tract. The inner walls of the respiratory airways are present with sticky mucus, which prevents airway infections. The lysozymes and other chemicals present in mucus, tears, saliva, and gastric fluid provide protection by destroying bacteria. The urinary tract is prevented from infections by the urine's low pH and flushing action. Interferons are a group of glycoproteins that are produced by every nucleated human cell in response to a wide range of stimuli, such as bacterial, viral, and parasitic infections or tumor cells. Interferons are designated alpha, beta, gamma, and omega, on the basis of their association with the producer cells and functions. Interferons inhibit viral replication in the neighboring uninfected cells through specific receptors on the cells, without interfering with their normal metabolic processes. Interferons also inhibit cell proliferation of certain tumors, encouraging its use in cancer therapy. The cellular mechanisms of the immune system include cellular components involved in natural resistance, namely phagocytic cells, anti-inflammatory responses, and natural killer cells or NK cells. Phagocytosis is a process whereby a single phagocytic cell engulfs objects such as non-functional cells, mutated cells, or invading infectious organisms. Inflammatory responses are the body's local response to infection or injury. The familiar manifestation of inflammation includes local redness, swelling, burning sensation, and pain. The key components in inflammation are phagocytes, neutrophils, monocytes, and macrophages. Neutrophils are abundant in the blood. These enter the tissues and phagocytize pathogens in acute inflammation. Monocytes are a type of white blood cell made in the bone marrow, which enter the blood and migrate into the connective tissue where they differentiate into macrophages. Macrophages secrete various substances which contribute to natural resistance. Natural killer cells, or NK cells, are small cytotoxic lymphocytes that play a major role in innate immunity. NK cells are a part of the first line of defense against cancer and infected cells. These cells are named as natural killers as they do not require activation by specific antigens present on the cell, but are activated by cytokines released from other immune cells. The acquired or specific immune responses include two broad categories: antibody-mediated immune response, AMI, or humoral immunity, and cell-mediated immune response, CMI. Antibody-mediated immunity refers to the immune response initiated by antibodies released from B cells. The B lymphocytes, or B cells, on interaction with antigens, proliferate and differentiate into specialized cells called plasma cells and memory cells. The plasma cells produce antibodies that bind to the antigen and destroy them, while the memory cells remain in the body for a longer duration and stimulate B cells to produce antibodies when the body is again exposed to the same antigen. The cell-mediated immune response involves the macrophages, natural killer cells, NK cells, helper T cells, and cytotoxic T cells. This provides major defense against intracellular viruses and cancer cells. Macrophages and NK cells target cells infected with microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, and certain fungi. Helper T cells, also known as CD4 cells or CD4 lymphocytes, are white blood cells that carry CD4 receptor on their surface. CD4 cells play an important role by stimulating other immune cells during an immune response. T cells with CD4 receptors recognize antigens on the surface of a virus-infected cell and secrete lymphokines that stimulate B cells and cytotoxic T cells. Cytotoxic T cells, also known as CD8 cells or killer T cells, have T cell receptors, TCRs, on their surface that recognize an antigenic peptide complexed with MHC class I molecule. These white blood cells thus help in destroying infected and damaged cells. The human body's defense mechanisms consist of organs, tissues, cells, and their products that protect it from pathogens and allergens. The organs, types of cells involved, and the different types of immune pathways are depicted in these videos of virtual reality, making the understanding of these basic incidents of the human body quite simple.